Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Crashes and Taxes. I am your host for this podcast, Rebecca Walser. So excited that you have joined us today. We're going to talk about something that's not market related today, but actually everything is market related. So of course it is market related. It is certainly tax related. It is affects your wallet because it's politics. And not politics whether you're blue or red. I don't care. I talk about money. Money's green. I want to talk about specifically AB5 out of California because there is now a push to make AB5 nationalized or a nationwide way of the world for the United States of America. And this is a huge problem. So this really podcast, we should just label it the law of unintended consequences. If you remember from science class, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It amazes me that people learn this basic principle of physics and they go to Congress and they forget. They think they're going to pass a law and that somehow this law is going to magically not have that equal and opposite reaction apply. AB5 stands for Assembly Bill 5, passed into law in late 2019 in California, applying to California only. And basically, it relates to independent contractors. So let's just first establish a couple of basic premises. Number one, the government is the creator of nothing. I don't care if it's a local government. I don't care if it's a state government. I don't care if it's the federal government. The government is the creator of nothing. They are simply a transferer from people or businesses that have to people or businesses that don't. They are simply a means of a transfer system. There is one exception to that general principle. That is the military at the federal level. So the military industrial complex, if you'd like to call it that, is a creation of something. They create a lot of economics from weapons, from ammunition, from arsenals, from tanks, from vehicles. They are unto themselves a creation of economics. So besides that, the government creates nothing, but the military has to be paid for, and it gets paid for by you and I. So once again, a transfer of everything. So AB5 arrived in California as a result of sorry for the computer alerts, but AB5 arrived in California as a result of a Supreme Court case that went to the Supreme Court of California, not the Supreme Court of the United States, and basically wanted to classify, the trucking company had basically erroneously changed all of their truckers from employees with benefits to independent contractors, and basically for profitable reasons, to basically show their profits going up. And the truckers, of course, sued, and the California Supreme Court came down with a ABC test, three-pronged test, we call it in the law, to basically determine whether or not somebody is in fact an independent contractor. Now, what happened was after this lawsuit came down, after this decision came down with the simplified ABC test, and it was the Dynamex decision basically it was scrapping, you now have the Congress, the legislature of California, saying, oh, we need to apply this test to everybody. And that is AB5, Assembly Bill 5, and that's exactly what it did. I want to go over this ABC test, this three-pronged test. The first thing, in order to be classified as an independent contractor, one, you must work independently. Well, that's kind of a given, kind of common sense. If I'm able to work independently and an employer doesn't tell me where I have to be, when I have to be there, I probably am some kind of independent contractor. That's number one. That must make sense. But here's the problem. Prong B is the problem. Prong B is the killer of the test. Prong B says that the independent contractor must be doing work that is different than what the business does. So there you go. That's it. And then prong C, they must offer their work to other businesses or to the public. So in other words, to be an independent contractor, you can't just exclusively offer your services to just one business. That sort of doesn't really make sense in the real world if you think about it, because think about this. If you're a marketing agency, and this has happened, I mean, I actually think of a really high profile example right off the top of my head that I could give you right now. But the point is, if you're a marketing agency and you do really well for a client, oftentimes they will hire you full-time, not full-time in the sense that you become an employee, but they will hire your firm full-time to just do marketing for their firm. And they give you so much work that it takes all your capacity. So they have not brought you in-house. They have not made you an employee. They are still subcontracting you out as an independent contractor, but you have been fully occupied to capacity with just their work. So now you would no longer be able to be classified in that sense as an independent vendor because you would be only working for them. And so this is the problem. So again, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Why did California do this? Okay, let's just step back and say, why is California so eager? Well, you've got Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, you've got these companies that have thousands of workers. In fact, it's 1 million people in California that they estimated that will be affected by AB5. 1 million workers in the state of California, okay? So 1 million people classified as independent contractors. Why does California care how a business classifies somebody? Well, it's always the money. If somebody is classified as an independent contractor, the business has no responsibility to make sure payroll taxes are automatically withheld and state income taxes. California has a top tax rate of 13%. It is the highest in the country. It is the highest tax state in the union. And their franchise tax board is the most aggressive tax collector at the state level, bar none, from a tax attorney's perspective, let me tell you. So California cares about the taxes. Now, of course, they try to say that this is for the employee's benefit or the contractor's benefit, right? Oh, these big bad Uber and these big bad Lyft and these big bad companies that are not giving you your benefits and, your medical benefits and your vacation benefits and all of these benefits. Shame on them. They need to reclassify you as an employee so they can stop messing, you over and you get your benefits. That's not the reason. The reason always comes down to money. It's always about the money. Be clear about that. It is about the money. If 1 million workers are classified as independent contractors, then they on their own have to report separately their income on a California state income tax return. It doesn't get automatically withheld. They have to report it on a return. They have to send it in on a quarterly basis as an actual self-employed business or a self-employed person. And it is up to the individual. And guess what? Individuals aren't really great about paying all of their taxes because they have a lot of expenses. Well, I have the expense of my car maintenance when I'm driving an Uber car or a Lyft job. I can write that off. I can write off mileage. I can write off the servicing of my car. I can write off certain things that are related to the business I'm providing as an independent contractor that get to reduce my income and therefore reduce the state income tax that I'm paying. Because you get to reduce your expenses when you're an independent contractor, assuming that you've done some kind of, incorporation or something for your business. If you are just getting that as a W-2, guess what? No, all of it is subject 100% to the state income tax scheme. There's no deduction at the state level for expenses. You pay state income tax up to 13% maximum in California on the full amount. So this is an income thing, but the law of unintended consequences applies here because they were thinking about the Uber drivers and the Lyft drivers. They weren't thinking about the small mom and pop independent yoga instructors and the actors in California that are independent contractors that are hired by different movie production studios to produce a film that is based in Hollywood, California. They weren't thinking about those people. All of those people are independent contractors. And when they are hired and provide a service, they are hired to provide a service of the business that is in the same line of work. So you don't hire an actor to act at some place that doesn't need acting. You don't hire a yoga instructor to give yoga lessons at a non-yoga studio. So prong B of the ABC test kills it for everybody. And this means that gone is the day when a business can go out and hire an independent contractor that will basically be able to accept a payment of an invoice, write off expenses, and then on their own, of their own volition and their own responsibility, pay taxes. And therefore, California knows that the tax rolls are not being fully automatically collected. So this is a big brother play with which to put the responsibility of your individual tax collection away from the individual and back to an employer with major fines. Massive fines if an employer miscategorizes you as an independent contractor when in fact you are what they would technically reclassify you as an employee. The problem, of course, from the employee's perspective, the employer's perspective rather, is the expense. Okay, so let me just explain something to you. Uber and Lyft, both recent IPOs, 2019, their business model loses money right now. And this, by the way, just happened in the UK recently too. Before this AB5 came out in California last year, United Kingdom in the UK, there's equivalent of the Supreme Court, basically also ruled that Uber drivers were in fact employees and not independent contractors. And when Uber went to its IPO, they had to disclose and list a major business threat to the potential success or failure of the IPO for shareholders. In your prospectus, you have to give a prospectus, you have to list. And Uber had to list that they lost at the lower level of the UK and the UK court system about the fact that their drivers over there were reclassified by the UK government as actual employees and not independent contractors. And that's going up all the way to the UK Supreme Court and has yet to be decided. But let me just explain to you that they listed that as a threat in their US IPO prospectus. Why? Because they already lose money. All of Uber and Lyft's drivers are right now independent contractors using their own vehicles. If you move to an employee-based model, you're talking about an employee-based model of a fleet of cars. You're talking about paying drivers specifically amount by the hour, or I don't even know. They are already losing money. These companies are not profitable. Uber is not a profitable company. Lyft is not a profitable company. Don't get me started on the IPOs that went out in 2019 where the companies had these massive valuations, yet no end inside of actually net profitable quarters. And so with you're worried about Uber or Lyft as an IPO that you maybe bought into last year, and you thought, well, these are going to become profitable somehow, and AB5, which is making a disaster of California's independent contractors, you got freelance writers that write for the newspapers. Newspapers don't have staff writers hardly at all anymore because the media and journalism industry has completely changed in the last 20 years. I mean, it is 1,000% changed. We have so many self-journalists now. We have so many different sources of media, just like this podcast is. So the way that we used to consume media, which was through the 3 major broadcast networks at 6 p.m. on the nightly news, that's all gone. There's still some people that watch that, but the consumption of national news in that fashion is completely gone. Our cell phone is our news, outlet. We get a lot of news from our social media. So newscasters and journalists, independent journalists, have become independent contractors for years, and they write for multiple institutions, for multiple different, actual media conglomerates. But you know what? Now they are no longer classified as independent contract because they're writing journalism for a media corporation. So the media is in the business of journalism, and so therefore they would no longer be classified as an independent contractor. Even this podcast and the group that we, work with to develop our podcast, even they haven't been able to. It's just been a mess. They're based in California, and they themselves had to deal with this AB5. So going back to Uber and Lyft and the government grab for more taxation that's coming down the pipe, make no mistake about it, this is on its way, folks. It's on its way. The law of unintended consequences has definitely had a huge problem. If Uber and Lyft aren't profitable while they are not paying FICA taxes, Social Security, and Medicare taxes, because these people are classified as independent contractors and responsible for those taxes themselves. They are not collecting state income taxes. They are not withholding federal income taxes from their quote, quote, drivers who are now quote, quote, employees in California. Imagine when they are forced with a nationalized AB5 to make everybody an employee. And now they've got all of the expenses, all of the taxes, all of the insurance, all of the car maintenance, all of the cars. Add all of that to the business model of Uber and Lyft, and the companies are out of business. They already don't make money. They're already not profitable. They're just counting on the fact that somehow people get so addicted to Uber and Lyft, we'll eventually give up our own cars and we'll just autonomously be driven everywhere without our own car and our own vehicle, and eventually it will become a profitable business model. And maybe then they won't have an employee because the car will drive itself. But until we have a world full of autonomously driven vehicles and we give up our own, the Uber and Lyft models will just go right out of business. This is taxation to the point of annihilation, taxation to the point of the business model does not make sense. It was something that was disclosed in their prospectus, and it is coming true in California, and woe be to us in America. Think of all the things that you do, that you participate in, your gym, your class, your this, your that. You hire somebody to come over and help you, do training at the house once a week. I don't know, your dog walker. Any of these people now become your employee and you're responsible and have a big government fine if you don't appropriately withheld taxes from them. Disaster, disaster, disaster. So no, thank you, California. Let's not make AB5 the benchmark for all of the United States of America. I'm Rebecca Walser, talking today about politics, how it affects you, how it affects your opportunities, how it affects taxation, and therefore how it affects everything that we do. Until next time, guys, have a great one.